Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with great recent recordings of the classics, the performances that tell us that as the new millennium dawneth, our cultural heritageth is okayeth. And we're talking about Bach concertos, all of the Bach concertos, and the orchestral suites. And why is the cat, what is she doing now? Oh, good Lord. Okay, never mind. So, Bach orchestral suites, really cool Bach stuff. And the performances in question really sort of, well, they opened the new century because they date from 2000, 2001, 2003, 2004, and 2008. From that era on the Alpha label, which was a relatively new label, with featuring Café Zimmermann. This is a 6-disc set that gives us all the Bach concertos with various instruments and the orchestral suites. At least, yes, all of them. They're all here. So that means you get, let's just to be clear, you get the orchestral suites, you get the Brandenburg concertos, you get the harpsichord concertos, which are really cool, the concertos for 2 harpsichords, the concertos for 3 harpsichords. Oh, gosh darn, let's see. The concerto for 4 harpsichords, the concerto for oboe d'amore, those are reconstructed concertos, concertos for violin, the concertos for 2 violins, the concerto for violin and oboe, BWV 1060. Well, that's a reconstruction from a double harpsichord concerto, I think, and the triple concerto, BWV 1044. So let's see, where's 1061 or whatever that? Yes, that one is. Wow. There's a lot of harpsichord and other concerti. Really kind of nifty stuff. So you've got all the Bach concerti here that you could ever possibly want. And they're absolutely splendid. Really wonderful performances on period instruments. We've talked about them before, but we haven't talked about them in this context. That is, being recordings for the new millennium, whatever that means. The point is, of course, and we've made this going into this series, that one thing that we're in really good shape with is Baroque music and period instrument performances of Baroque music. Now, whether you agree with or disagree with all of the things that these people do to make their period instrument performances periody, there's no question that as time went on, as the 1970s and 80s and 90s wore on, period instrument groups got better. They learned how to play their instruments. They developed a personality, a character, an approach. It wasn't just a question of following scholarly strictures, gleaned from treatises that nobody read or cared about. It was the result, for good or ill, of performers being regularly constituted, performing live, playing a repertoire, getting to know it. In other words, what happened to the period instrument movement is that it matured. It matured in the same way that today's modern instruments matured. They had a pedigree, they had a tradition, they had a history of performance, they had a repertoire. All of those things conspired to create a body of musicians and ensembles who were extremely comfortable in a particular repertoire, and who learned how to do it better and better as time went on. And of course, one of the ironies of the period instrument movement in general is that the thing that made it sound authentic to us was its incompetence, at least when it started. And the more frequently they play and the more experience they get, the more they begin to sound like normal instruments. Why? Because they play them more easily. They have a better sense of style. They know the repertoire better. They're more free to interpret. All of those things are happening, and it's all making them sound more and more like traditional ensembles, even if they try to do certain, timbral things that make them sound different. The actual musicianship is modern musicianship, of course. How could it be anything but? And so there's that wonderful irony that I just find delicious, because there's no way no way that we can or want to create the absolutely horrendous circumstances of performances that prevailed in the day that most of this stuff was written, unless you were in a court orchestra like Mannheim or someplace where you actually had that very special opportunity to rehearse like crazy and learn a repertoire and play as a cohesive ensemble for years and years and years. No, that isn't the way it worked. And so Café Zimmermann here on Alpha is an example of one of those wonderful opportunities that have come together and which permit us to understand how the period instrument movement has matured and the often excellent work that they can do. And that is why we are in good shape as regards this repertoire, because the longer time, the span of time, the closer they're going to get to normalcy, to our modern standards of excellence, which is what everybody is still shooting for, regardless of what they might say otherwise. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me. Take care.